Well, I've just been, triggered into being more specific about videos I've made in the past. I've talked about a number of crimes I did not commit, but for which on paper, and only on paper, I was convicted, and of course those so-called convictions, without reference numbers, without arrests, without charge, without courtrooms, those so-called convictions were read out when a particular housing association wanted to evict me. I haven't talked quite so much about the occasions when I actually was arrested. I've just been listening to a video about people held down, etc., in psychiatric institutions. Now, funnily enough, I haven't had much experience of actually being in a psychiatric institution. There was one time, no, both times I admitted myself voluntarily. One for alcohol and one for prescribed diazepam, not for mental illness. And in fact, doctors insist throughout my medical records that I don't have any psychosis whatsoever. And I have to say, my first experience was brilliant. It was the Royal Southamptons in Southampton, November, December 1980. I was treated very, very well. Nice staff and really nice, very memorable fellow patients. So I was lucky there. The other time, I paid a fortune. It was Marchwood Priory. I was given drugs that were addictive, while supposedly trying to get me off diazepam. I was given carbamazepine and told it was not an antidepressant. It is. Antidepressants don't agree with me, not at all, none of them. And I was given Zimmervane / Zopiclone and told that was not addictive. Well, we all know that it is now. And that was my experience of paid psychiatry, although oh God. Never mind the ones I saw as outpatients, eh? My experience of prison cells has been absolutely diabolical. When you are arrested, you clearly have not been actually charged, and you clearly have not been convicted. You are, however, no matter how sick you are, and no matter how claustrophobic you are, put into a holding cell. Now that in itself is a terrible experience for a claustrophobe. Bearing in mind, at this point, you haven't been charged with a crime. And what happens to you there is they decide you might commit suicide. And they take off your watch, they take off your own clothes. They put you in some outfit that's about as humiliating as you can possibly get. Some holding cells do not have loos in them, and those that do have loos very often don't have toilet roll in them, and they don't have sinks in them to wash your hands. So hygiene is out of the question. They're not heated. Not in my experience, anyway. You can't, of course, see out. It's like being buried alive. And you're given a little, very thin plastic mattress. No bedding of any kind. You have your watch taken off you. You have all your medication taken off you. And you can't have any until the prison doctor arrives, which generally takes about 6 hours at least, in my experience. Therefore, if that were to happen to me now, if I were to be arrested now and my inhalers were taken off me, as has happened in the past, I would be dead by the time the prison doctor got there. You can't have any medication without that doctor say so. You don't have a watch, you've no idea what time it is. Very disorientating, you can't tell if it's day or night. You're supposed to be given a copy of your rights, but you're very lucky to get those. You're supposed to be given pen and paper or a pencil and paper, but you don't get those. You don't get a book to read, not even the Bible if you're that way inclined. I would have read a Bible for something, anything to read. So basically, you're sitting there. They generally stretch it out to the max, which is nearly as near to 24 hours as they can get. Of course, you have to ring a buzzer for water. They do occasionally bring you food. I haven't been left to starve. This makes it sound like I make a habit of getting arrested. Only since I came to Wales. Never before. Oh no, I did when I was 16 spend time in a prison cell for the crime of having run away from home, and that was all. And getting raped during my process of running away. I was in a cell overnight then. I wasn't claustrophobic then, which was good, but I do wonder if claustrophobia kind of arose from that. On the occasion when I was arrested for possession of a knife, which I did have a knife, at 1 o'clock on the 22nd of February 2011 in a little tiny hamlet called Llannon on the Welsh coast. Please be advised that people are not wandering around at 1 a.m. on a February night in a little hamlet. They're not there. Therefore, nobody was at risk from the fact that I had a knife on me. However, somebody was watching from a window across the road. And 2 police cars, I think it was, came screaming to a halt beside me. I had my dog with me, I had my laptop with me, I had to drop it. I was thrown to the ground, which certainly didn't do my wrists or my back any good, and handcuffed. My jacket was pulled right up over my head so that I could barely breathe. That would kill me now. I was threatened with a taser. Drop your bags or we'll taser you. So of course I dropped them, including the laptop. The dog and I were then taken to Aberystwyth police station, where I have to say some of the policemen were decent. But that doesn't make up for the conditions in the holding cell, to be honest. My poor dog was put into a kennel overnight. This is, of course, the most memorable occasion. And as stated from there on in, maximum humiliation. And of course, the policemen go to an awful lot of trouble to tell you that they're not trying to humiliate you, while in point of fact, they very obviously are trying to humiliate you. Watching while you take off all your own clothes and put on theirs, for example. Well, the ones they give you. And of course, your bag is taken off you, all your personal possessions, everything. Everything. As I say, no doctor for at least 6 hours, and I can't remember how many hours after that. The solicitor arrived, and so on and so forth. After that, you got kind of coming and going, but not enough of it, quite honestly, because you need that human company. Solitary confinement, even for a few hours, if you already have PTSD, is absolutely appalling. And if you're claustrophobic as well, absolutely, totally appalling. Basically, what it is a torture that is inflicted before any charges have been made, let alone a conviction. I am strongly of the opinion that holding cells should be done away with, and there must be some other way of detaining someone suspected of a crime before they're charged and convicted, because after all, they may not be charged and they may not be convicted. I did give a long list of things of which I have been convicted on paper and on paper only. Never been arrested, never been charged, never been convicted. But they're on paper. Like an incident at a coffee shop, when my only crime was to not order coffee, and the proprietor called the police. still never have figured that one out, and I don't know what the charge was. Well, there wasn't one. They didn't even have a reference number for it, but it was on paper and it was read out to try to prove that I was antisocial, which I now am, unfortunately. This is like 5 years down the line, and for the last 3.5 years, I have mostly avoided human company. I wasn't antisocial before that, not at all. And then there was the occasion that I was convicted on the spot, and not even told, by the way. I didn't even know I'd been convicted of a crime. No one even spoke to me about it. Of a notice referring to eating pussy, which was tacked to the outside of my front door, and I was found guilty of having put it there. On paper, and only on paper. The list is just endless. Guilty on paper, and only on paper, of harassing a woman who, in point of fact, had spent 4 months harassing me, and I had phoned her once to tell her to lay off. The list is endless, and I have done it before when I was talking about gang stalking. I've been through most of these things before. Yeah, I'm very tired and very upset because of an FB friend. She didn't die last night, but I discovered she was dead last night. Just listening to that video, which was actually about psychiatric hospitals, has triggered an awful lot about my experience of false convictions and probably not actually false arrest, but breaches of my human rights while I was awaiting finding out whether I was going to be charged. It was torture. For a claustrophobe, it's torture. For a person suffering from post-traumatic stress, it is torture. And there has to be something more civilized so that they can detain particularly non-violent people in a way that will not damage their mental health even further. I was 56, for Christ's sake. I was diagnosed with COPD a year later, and the diagnosis was missed a year earlier. So I already had it. It was obvious that physically I was no threat to anyone whatsoever. A lone 56-year-old woman with the world's most gentle dog, who never hurt a soul in her life or threatened to. Stopped me writing though, didn't it?